Hello, I'm Ed Reed, editor of E-FWD, and I'm in the London studio today to talk to Oonagh O'Grady, Vice President at Hydrostor. Oonagh's got some ideas about long-duration energy storage, an area that the UK is looking to get into as we move towards our Clean Power 2030 goals. It feels like energy storage, long-duration energy storage, has to be a big part of how the UK moves towards clean power. But it also feels like we've not actually built any for a long time. How have we not built it, and how should we start thinking about building it?
I think firstly, maybe long duration energy storage, to define it, it's an umbrella term. I think in the UK it's synonymous maybe with pumped hydro, and that is very much the vision you see when you think of long duration energy storage in a UK context. Yes, the last pumped hydro plants were probably built over 40 years ago. But why is it important? Firstly, we have ambitious targets with regards to renewable integration, and to cost effectively integrate those renewables into the system, you do need long duration energy storage. Long duration energy storage, the differentiation probably between short duration, batteries, which we would know, and long duration, internationally, it's around the 8 hours. So it's really about intermittent or intraday storage, but working all the way to 24 hours plus as well for those low periods of enduring wind. The reason it's needed is security of supply, which is obviously critical. And we've seen when interconnectors, etc., have gone down in the UK over the last period. But in addition to that, there is a need for it to be able to integrate those renewables. And that need is not just in one location, it's right across the UK. We've seen the UK's Clean Power 2030 plan, which to get to those targets, you have to see renewables integrated nationwide across the UK. And in order to do that, you do need long duration energy storage assets, diversified locationally wise across the UK. Why haven't we built? It's about signals. It's about signals for investment. The reason that offshore wind has been built is the really successful CFD program here in the UK. And with regards to long duration energy storage, it's about enduring signals, clarity on capacities required and the timing that they are required. And NESO's advice to government on Clean Power 2030 shows quite a significant need for additional long duration energy storage. To put it into numbers, it looks like 1.2 to 3.2 gigawatts required by 2030 alone, and an additional 1 to 4 gigawatts required by 2035. And that is an ambitious plan given the scale of these assets and the long lead times to deliver them as well.
You mentioned about sort of cost effectiveness. You've talked about signals. It feels like this is kind of really talking around sort of price, right? It feels like, how should we try and price this sort of security of supply, sort of tackling intermittency? The government came out with its cap and floor plans just before Christmas. Does this move us in the right direction?
I think it certainly moves us in the right direction. And before even talking about price, I think it's about benefit. It's about cost benefit. It's obviously protecting the cost to consumers is exceptionally important. It gives all energy developers and all energy regulators and policy setters the right to operate and the license to operate with regards to Clean Power 2030. I think with regards to price, it's not just about price alone. It's about the system need and delivering on system need. So the system need is not just about getting gigawatts on the system. It's about getting the right gigawatts with the right services in the right place at the right time to facilitate integration of renewables, to provide that cost benefit, as well as, I think, the final bit I would say is to allow that cost-effective integration of those renewables as well.
And Hydrostor is your company. What is your part? What part do you play? What do you bring to this sort of LDES, as we call it?
Hydrostor is a leading international technology and developer of long-duration energy storage. Our technology is advanced compressed air energy storage. And for those familiar with compressed air, it is about taking off-peak electricity off the system, storing it underground through compressed air, and releasing it back onto the system to generate electricity. With regards to the advanced element, we have made 2 adaptations which provide benefits as well. So the first adaptation is that we, due to incorporation of a hydrostatic compensator by way of a relatively small reservoir, we can actually site in hard rock as opposed to salt cavities, which would be where traditional compressed air assets have been sited. That means that we can flexibly site around the system where the system needs us. And in a UK context, that is actually 1/2 to 1/3 of all of the UK geology or geography. Secondly, traditional compressed air would have required the introduction of an external fossil fuel to basically generate the electricity at the end of the process. By the introduction of a proprietary thermal management system, we have negated that need. So what that actually means is while we are compressing the air, we are siphoning off, capturing the heat, and reintroducing that high-grade heat back into the process as we are generating electricity to negate the need for that fossil fuel, meaning it is a zero emissions system. With regards to where we are at as a company, we have advanced deployment of about 700 megawatts through 2 main projects in mature LDES markets of Australia and California. In Australia, our Silver City project, a 200 megawatt project, is located in Broken Hill. And it has been successful in the LDES program in New South Wales, run by Transgrid, which is the equivalent of the LDES scheme here in the UK. In California, our Willow Rock project is a 500 megawatt energy storage project, 8+ hours duration. It is located in Kern County in California. And just before Christmas, we got the good news that we had a conditional loan guarantee from the Department of Energy for circa $1.7 billion US as well. But we are deploying at scale in those mature international markets. And we also have a pipeline of about 7 gigawatts built up behind that in maturing LDES markets. So for example, New York, where a procurement process has been announced, as well as Ontario, our home base within Canada as well.
So looking at these, obviously you've got a sort of strong, understandably North American sort of a focus. You've got Australia. What brings Hydrostor to the UK, right? Does the UK compete with those other areas? How does it stack up internationally?
Yeah, sure. I think with regards to the UK, Hydrostor have been operating in the UK for quite a while, actually. But certainly we renewed our focus on the UK coming up to the consultation on the LDES scheme back in January 2024. So for the last 12 to 18 months, there has been a renewed focus on early stage development activities, grid applications, etc. The UK, I think, we would applaud the government's ambition and the pace at which they're looking to implement the LDES cap and floor scheme. And that is very much being driven by Clean Power 2030 and the ambitions that come with that. I think we would see maybe on this side of the Atlantic, certainly the UK as one of the most progressed. The only other European country to announce a scheme for long duration energy storage with that mandate is Italy. And we are certainly seeing the soundings in other European countries. But I think with the UK using an existing proven cap and floor scheme or a cap and floor type contract, and the fact that the UK has a long-standing history of long duration energy storage through pumped hydro certainly makes it an attractive market for us. I think where we are at, though, is that the devil's in the detail. And therefore, it is really about working with government to ensure that there are long-term signals for investment and continued investment of DevEx to ensure that us as developers provide that pipeline of projects that will satisfy system need, that will allow the widespread integration of renewables nationwide, and that will protect consumers by having competitive tension and a choice of assets to assess.
You sort of started off by talking about sort of the long lead sort of nature of building this project, and obviously that's something we see with sort of pumped storage hydro as well. How long does it take? Can you give us some times on how long it takes? And I suppose there's a sort of an interplay with sort of grid connections and the sort of the regulatory challenges kind of along the way.
Most certainly. I think long lead, you could possibly say that quite a lot of energy assets are long lead because there are, and rightly so, statutory processes for planning. We see quite a lot of grid reform ongoing at the moment, and we're very supportive of the direction of travel of the grid reform. But now for us, it's about certainty on timing and processes so that we can continue our development strategy to achieve the earliest delivery date as possible. With regards to the long lead element, I think the key thing to understand about long duration energy storage is it's an umbrella term for lots of different technologies. And all of those technologies have different lead times. So for example, while pumped hydro has maybe the 7 to 10 year construction period, assets like Hydrostor's A-Case has a construction period of 4 to 4.5 years. Now, that means that those development timelines are different. And I think the challenge that the government has in designing an LDES scheme for an umbrella term of assets is that it needs to take all of those different development timelines and processes into consideration.
And what do you think you would need to get going, right? What do you need to actually sort of, I think that we speak a lot about sort of, 2030 and, 2050 and all these kind of big goals, but like thinking in the sort of the near term, what do you need to kind of, start being like, this is what we can do. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, I think if I say it this way, it's clear targets, it's an open and transparent process, and it is a process with a competitive element to it to ensure protection for consumers and the best outcome for those consumers. I think what does that translate into? We would recommend to government, they have a challenge. So firstly, I think maybe talking about the government's challenge, they are rightly so focused on 2030. That's the ambition, that's the ambition of the government, that's what they have to deliver on. But for long lead assets like this, we have to look further. We have to look out to 2035. So our recommendation to government is to proceed on a 2-track approach, both launched at the same time. One advanced track that really focuses on that 2030, and a more enduring track that focuses on plus 2030. That allows government potentially make trade-offs to deliver on that 2030 ambition and ensuring they are getting those projects committed and onto the system by 2030, but taking a more optimal procurement route with regards to an enduring track. That enduring track, obviously with longer delivery timelines, potentially has different progress eligibility or pre-qualification timeline to the accelerated track, acknowledging it is on a longer delivery timeline. And I think with regards to pre-qualification criteria, it is probably tens of millions to prepare projects for these processes. That pre-qualification criteria should probably be more about progressing to as opposed to achievement of. And to counter that from a government risk perspective, potentially inserting off-ramps where they, make a commitment to procure X amount, conditions change, things change, they off-ramp, can off-ramp some of those projects, cover the DevEx cost and move on. So I think there is, I suppose, a kind of combined approach that would allow them balance achieving 2030 while giving those signals, most importantly, to projects that are slightly later than 2030, between 2030 and 35, that they can continue to invest their DevEx to meet those timelines, while still at the same time through an accelerated process get those gigawatts on the system.
Some interesting ideas there from Oonagh about long duration energy storage. And I think particularly around 2030 and what comes after 2030. Stay tuned for more E-Forward Momentum moments.